Now we're live?
All right.
Okay. You know that the name on the bottom is still very humorously wrong.
No, it's Paranormal Encyclopedia on there.
It's still okay, I guess.
It just changed.
Yeah. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. I am, of course, your host, Kevin Mears, demonologist in the Paranormal Encyclopedia. I'm joined by my co-host.
Of course, author Brian McKinley, godfather of vampire thrillers.
And we've got a really interesting, I think, topic tonight to go a bit back to our roots. We're going to be talking about exorcisms. But first, of course, we got to talk about our sponsor.
Yes.
Which, of course, the first sponsor for the evening is Audible. Folks, if you don't have a subscription to Audible, you want a subscription to Audible. Thousands, tens of thousands of audiobooks on a huge range of topics. Fiction and nonfiction, plenty of reference information. I'm sure some stuff, I know there's stuff on the paranormal and on demonology on there. There's books of many of our past guests. Everything Brian has written is available there. There's one of John French's books on there. There is all of Carrie Vaughn's books on there. And there's Dacre Stoker's books on there. It's a huge resource of a ton of great books. If you go to audibletrial.com/paranormale, audibletrial.com/paranormale, get a free 1-month trial, you get a free audiobook. If you decide you don't like it, audiobooks aren't your thing, you can cancel it before the month's up. You don't have to pay anything, and you get to keep your audiobook for good.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what more do you want?
No, it's a pretty good deal.
I mean, right now I'm listening to I Strahd by P.N. Elrod.
Oh, nice. Good author.
Very good author, very good book. Nice setup for our Dungeons and Dragons campaign on Fridays.
That's what I'm reading.
What are you reading?
Good Omens.
Good, excellent choice. That's on there too.
Yeah.
And remember, folks, not directly, not a sponsor of the show, but the Good Omens series is starting on May 3rd. The end of the world is coming May 31st. We know for sure this time because it's going to be on Amazon. But okay, so I wanted to talk tonight about exorcisms. Obviously, it directly relates to my area of expertise as a demonologist. But there's also a big confusion I've been noticing lately of there's a right way to do an exorcism and there's a wrong way to do an exorcism. Up to and including, very tragically and unfortunately, people have died because things are done horribly wrong.
Like the Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yes, which is a complex situation because it is based on an actual case, the exorcism of a German girl by the name of Anneliese Michel.
Mm-hmm.
The movie presents things interestingly. Lou, my mentor, was actually a technical advisor on that movie.
Nice.
So they get a lot of details about exorcism. He didn't know a whole lot about the case. He hadn't worked on the case. But they get a lot of technical details about demonology and exorcism, correct? Actually, he's the one who suggested the court drama because he thought it would be more interesting to play with the idea and get the audience thinking about the possibility rather than doing The Exorcist all over again and making, a decisive, demons are out there. It's like, think about it. Think about what you think is real.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yes, in the original case of Anneliese Michel is very similar to the movie, believe it or not. The girl claimed to be possessed by Satan, by Lucifer, by Belial, by Hitler, by Judas Iscariot. 6 different major devils, including Nero Caesar. Standing
room only in there.
Well, keep in mind, one of the most famous exorcisms in the Bible was the exorcism of the Legion demon, as it's known. And Legion in Roman terms meant between 2,000 and 6,000.
Right.
In one dude. And you could argue it's a single demon going by that name, but although it says our name is Legion, for we are many. On the other hand, when it's driven out into an entire herd of swine, which certainly suggests there's more than one. But the big thing I want to get to with this is that there's really 2 related but separate concepts here. There's actual proper solemn exorcism, and then there's what's called deliverance ministry. Now, don't get me wrong, exorcists screw things up royally too. But a lot of the time, when you hear about children being beaten to death, or being starved to death, it's somebody doing what's more properly called deliverance ministry than exorcism. Particularly because, and here's the simplest difference. Exorcism is a rite of the Roman Catholic Church. It's also the same rite is used by a lot of other churches. You find it in a lot of Orthodox churches. You find it in Episcopals, Anglicans, all of the ones that are definitely related to Catholicism in that sense use that rite, a very similar rite. Even some of the Protestants, the out-and-out Protestants, use the rite. Deliverance ministry is make it up as you go.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Heal. Cast
which
out
is
the
faith
demons.
healing, which is yet another related.
Yeah, cast out the demons of.
Now, I'm not saying deliverance ministry never works. But here's the thing to let me talk a little bit about the history of the ritual of exorcism and what makes it different on the simplest levels. So the ritual of exorcism was first formally codified in the 17th century. It was then updated in 1999. Fun note, almost all exorcists prefer the original ritual. Up to and including the fact the Catholic Church has explicitly allowed them to use either ritual as they prefer. Gabriel Armath, the late chief exorcist of Rome, certainly preferred the original ritual. Father Joseph Brose, my own mentor, preferred the original ritual. The original, I don't know a whole lot about the new ritual. I've seen copies, and possibly more, I won't say, of the original, the full form of the original ritual, which is a little difficult to get your hands on, believe it or not. But at least for lay people, particularly given I'm not a Catholic. But the big difference, the big thing to realize about it in its original form, and this is what separates it from deliverance ministry, is the original core prayers that make up that ritual go back to the apostles. Mm-hmm. The church has clear records of this, and even if you read the medieval texts of demonology, they mention that. Granted, the church added to those prayers, because here's what happened, is the apostles figured out which prayers worked best. And then the church spent 1,000 years figuring out which more prayers that worked really, really well, and organized them into a single ritual. There's power in those words. It doesn't have to be, and contrary to popular belief, it doesn't technically have to be done in Latin. It often is, particularly because for a number of years after the new ritual, revised ritual was released, they didn't translate it into English. So that was all you had to work with. And then there were some translations, but none of them were official, and it's gradually changed in that way. But you have this core set of prayers that go back to the foundations of Christianity. Which is also why you'll see some, Orthodox, which are, it's a bit of a chicken and egg whether the Orthodox Church is older than the Catholic Church. Another thing we know for sure is that the Coptic Church, which actually does have a slightly different ritual, I believe, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church are the oldest we're aware of anywhere. So old, in fact, nobody knows which one came first because they started very close to the same time and slightly in different. Coptic is Egyptian, Ethiopia, they're not the same place, so they may have started. They may have been founded by independently. They may have been interrelated. We don't know, but these prayers certainly work. And the other thing that's included that is more public knowledge is there's over 20 rules that are set down in the ritual that you have to follow based on hard experience about how to perform an exorcism. This covers the sort of priest who should be an exorcist. Under the rules of the Catholic Church, only a bishop can perform an exorcism, or alternatively, someone who's given dispensation, a priest who's given dispensation by a bishop, which is a change from older times because in the Middle Ages, there was actually an order within the church of exorcists that was not necessarily priests. So that once upon a time, someone like me could be a recognized exorcist. Now I'd have to go through seminary. But other rules go into making sure that they don't have it. And this is something the church has been on for actually hundreds of years. They were among the first people to recognize it. But someone who's thought to be demonically possessed has to go through medical and psychiatric screenings. And you see this. Actually, believe it or not, the Inquisition was one of the first courts in the world to recognize insanity as a defense. There are cases of people that were basically... insane asylums didn't exist at the time, so basically they got stuck in monasteries and things of that nature. Because that was what... You're not going to execute them. They're mentally unstable. They're not responsible for their actions. What are you going to do with them? There's actually a famous werewolf case where that happened. Basically, the Inquisition declared the guy crazy. They put him in they sentenced him to a monastery, which is a lot better than burning the traditional solution, which was to cut your head off and then burn the body at the stake.
Yeah.
Deliverance ministry is another kettle of fish. It's prayer, but often more than anything, it's in the name of Jesus, I command you to leave this person. There is no formal rules. There's no single formal way of doing this. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Many Protestants who do this are aware of the reality of psychiatric, mental, and physical illness that can look like demonic possession. The problem is, since there isn't a single authority or group of authorities making the rules about this, anyone can do it. And if anyone can do it, they make up their own rules and their own way of doing it. And some of them make up some stupid rules.
Yeah.
Case in point, in the Catholic ritual, the closest you will get to physical abuse is physically restraining the person. Because these people can become violent. The reality is, having talked to talked to other demonologists and exorcists and things of that nature, if you're going to restrain somebody, you want a doctor present. In fact, generally speaking, in the Catholic terminal way of doing things, you want a doctor present. It's just a better idea because the rite definitely puts a great deal of physical and emotional stress on the person and on the exorcist. People have had heart attacks before. People ask, why doesn't anybody die during an exorcism? They do. Aside from exorcisms that were done stupidly because they beat the person up or starve the person, sometimes, the priest, often it's an older priest, the priest's heart gives out. Things of that nature have happened. And again, if you're going to do it, it's not a bad idea at all to have doctors, psychiatrists, medical professionals that know what they're doing around. The other big thing, and this is an even more critical point that many, not all, but many deliverance ministers don't understand, is if somebody walks up to me tomorrow and says, I'm possessed by a demon, they're probably mentally ill, seeking attention, or both. Because the bottom line is, people tend to forget demons are smart. You don't go up to, it doesn't want to be cast out. It's not going to go up to somebody who can get it cast out and say, hi, I'm here, come get me.
Yeah.
They're very proud, but they're not stupid. And more particular, so in the Catholic ritual, you have to have evidence. And then that's basically my main job is, okay, somebody says that they think, it's usually not, I think I'm possessed. It's, I think my daughter's possessed. So someone like me gets involved and documents what's going on, talks to, talks to doctors if they can, or if the person hasn't seen them yet, tells them to go see one. Gathers a history, gathers information, and looks for signs that something's going on. A common question I've been asked by atheists and skeptics is, well, how can you be sure it's not mental illness? Well, the first clue is, if it responds to any form of psychiatric medication, it's not mental. It's not a demon.
Yeah.
If it doesn't respond to any psychiatric medication, it still might not be a demon because there's lots of mental illnesses that don't respond to medication.
Right.
If, on the other hand, you have a 12-year-old girl who was raised in an English-speaking home that went to public school, who suddenly starts conversing in fluent Hebrew, Aramaic, ancient Egyptian, Sumerian, Babylonian, or any other language that has been spoken in a couple hundred years, Latin, of course, 100 years, something weird is going on. It doesn't mean it's paranormal. It might be that they actually have had classes, or they've watched enough movies, or they've researched it on their own.
Hooked on phonics.
Yeah. But definitely, if somebody who doesn't have an obvious background for it suddenly shows fluency in a dead language, something very strange is going on. It's worth looking into. Superhuman strength is another common one, although there's a misconception that mentally ill people are all incredibly strong.
Yeah, it's not true.
No. Certainly in a manic state, someone with bipolar or any others can push the boundaries of their own physical limitations.
Yeah.
And certainly with enough adrenaline, you can push it even further. But there are consequences to that. Yes, in absolutely extreme circumstances, mothers have lifted cars. And their muscles paid the price.
Yeah.
There's this physical reality to how the body works. But another common one that's not so easy to explain is whenever I did a case with Father Joe, he had a tendency that I loved and respected for why he did it, but in the interest of a professional presentation drove me nuts. He'd walk in bib overalls splattered in paint. Now, the reason he did it was among several reasons. One was to test this. Another was he didn't want to freak people out and alarm people. And, oh, my God, there's a priest here. They already think we have the devil in the house. But the other thing is, if you have somebody who walks into a house like that, and somebody that's never met them before, didn't know a priest was coming, goes, "Hello, Father." It's a sign, or knows very specific things. Exorcists will talk to a person who's possessed, who will explain in graphic detail about another exorcism they were involved with 50 miles away 3 days ago, without the two people ever having met each other. Another common one that sort of relates here is they react strongly and violently in the presence of the holy. Crosses, crucifixes, holy water, holy oil. And for any evangelical types that are listening to me, every single one of those is mentioned in the Bible. I can get go look them up on Google. Spare me, this is all pagan. It's like no, this is biblical. They will respond violently, and it's very common if you think somebody's possessed to test them using these by setting things up so they're not aware of their presence. I don't want to go into detail here, because here's the thing. If any paranormal investigators or medical professionals want details about this, reach out to me privately. We can talk. I don't want to go into detail because you're deliberately provoking a response from a demonically possessed individual. If they're not possessed, you're going to find out. If they are possessed, they're probably about to turn very violent.
Yeah.
It's usually best to do this kind of thing in a hospital or some other controlled setting where they can be restrained if they turn violent. There's other signs that objects getting hurled across the room by unseen forces, unusual smells, sounds, things like that. Something to get an exorcist involved, a Catholic exorcist involved, or a deliverance minister that knows what the hell they're doing, you have to have signs of something unexplainable. If you don't have them, it should stop here.
Yeah.
Because you can do damage to somebody's psychology by convincing them that this belief they have that there are demons plaguing them is real when it isn't. And here's the thing, especially on that note, demonic possession is very, very rare. you're talking, the vast majority of people listening will never see a case of it in their life.
Yeah.
It is becoming more common, but more common from maybe 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 5,000. It's still, and I'm making up numbers here just to give you an idea of how ridiculously rare.
Yeah, it's probably rarer than that.
Yeah.
Like in the millions or something.
And most of the time, and granted, most of the time when somebody has a demon in their life, it's not possession. We've talked in the past, and you can go back through past shows about the stages of demonic attack. Most of the time, what people think is possession is actually obsession or oppression. And exorcisms are the tactical nuclear warheads of spiritual warfare. There are simpler solutions. Simplest solution, and I've said this on the show many times, and I'm going to say it again. If you think you've got a demon in your house, get your house blessed. 99% of the time, you'll never have another problem. I've had plenty of cases where I went out, had a priest, or even I did it myself. We just did a simple house blessing. That's it. No more problems. No formal exorcism. For an actual exorcism, and there are exorcisms of people, there are exorcisms of places, there are even exorcisms for objects. To take place, you need all of this evidence. You need confirmation there's not a psychiatric illness going on. And then it's a long ritual. Usually, I want to say it's an hour to 2 hours. It involves holy water, it involves invocation of saints, it involves invocation of the archangels, and it involves, obviously, a lot of Bible reading. One of the things that's interesting about it is where a lot of sacraments and rituals in the church, you always read this verse, you always say this prayer. In exorcisms, there is a prescribed set of things to read, there's a prescribed set of prayers to pray, but there's a lot of use what works. Mm-hmm. So every exorcist has his own bag of tricks, as it were. And what doesn't work. The big point, and if anyone wants to, obviously we only have an hour. We don't have that much time to get into everything. Although we'll do more on other shows. If anyone wants a good overview, there's an old book that's, I think, still in print called "Hostage to the Devil" by Malachi Martin. It's 4 contemporary cases of exorcism and possession, deliverance, which are not bad, but where the book shines is a detailed breakdown of what's going on spiritually and practically in terms of an exorcism. And one thing he gets into is you'll have this experience of the presence where you'll feel the entity there. And trust me, it's a weight. And the key point, the break point as he calls it, and why we call it exorcism as opposed to deliverance ministry, is exorcism means to bind with oath. It's from Latin. What you're trying to get, the whole point of the ritual, is you have to make it reveal its name. The biblical support of this is, of course, again, the story of Legion. Jesus commands the spirit to name itself. But when a demon gives up its actual name, it snaps its power. And it may take a little longer, but if you finally get it to stop lying, quit dodging, quit giving up nonsense, and give it up its real name, it's on its way out the door at this point. It's over. The catch is they will lie relentlessly. And you'll see this, because deliverance ministers do ask for the name. They're not quite right on how they bind things, which is another one of the differences. But what you run into is they accept the silliest names. There are exorcists out there, and there's some that even use the term, that claim there are lots of them that claim to have cast out Satan himself. I'm sorry, no, you haven't. You really haven't. And I'll get into why in a minute. But
of the idea of that personalized service,
yeah.
It's like the Satan himself came to deal with you, and it's like,
and that's a big part of why it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the really ridiculous, there's a book, and this is one of the few times I'll name names because this guy needs to be called out, by Bishop Roy Bryant, who basically gave himself the title of bishop, I might add. wrote a book called Diary of an Exorcist, Manual on Demonology. He claims to have cast out the Pac-Man demon, the demon of alcoholism, the demon of junk food, the demon of lying, the demon of... my personal favorite would be the demon of oral sex.
Ooh. Specialized area of expertise there.
Yeah. Homosexuality, lesbianism, this is another really common mistake. And it's not just a mistake in terms of practical demonology. It's a fundamental error in theology. Demons do not make people do bad things. Demons do not make people do things you find repugnant. I have said before, and I will say again, I personally believe in treating homosexuals kindly and compassionately, and that Christians need to get over it. But being homosexual does not make you demonically possessed. And if your kid's being unruly, he's probably a teenager, not demonically possessed.
Yeah.
Granted,
hard to tell the difference sometimes.
Yeah, granted, you might prefer demon possession to a teenager.
Well, the one can be fixed in an hour
yeah.
or two. The other one's years of hard work. I think that's why they go for...
God, the devil, and Bob puts it perfectly. God and Satan made a deal a long time ago. God gets them till they're 12. Satan gets them till they're 20. Actually, probably a little higher than 20. Just because it's 21 drinking age.
Yeah.
20-something.
At least in America.
True. And it was an American-based show, but... the majority... And here's why that's idiotic. Not aside from practically, and as everyone who listens know, I'm generally a pretty practical guy with this kind of stuff. But beyond that, here's the biggest reason that's ridiculous. The entirety of Christian, and feel free to call me wrong on this if you think so. Comments are always welcome, as is constructive, reasonable criticism. Just had somebody made some good comments on our last interview with Alex. But the entire point of Christian morality, the entire point of the idea of heaven and hell is based on personal responsibility. Mm. It's based on the idea that you're a sinner because you have made choices that are wrong. And you need to be saved from the consequences of your choices. If you say the devil made them do it, you take away personal responsibility. It's not their fault they did the bad thing. It's the demon's fault they did the bad thing. This is idiotic. This is not... It's like you're doing a disservice to the entire idea of Christianity to say all the bad things somebody's doing is somebody else's fault. Because if I put a gun to your head and make you rob a bank, am I the one who should be punished, or is the person who I put the gun to the head of supposed to be punished? The law says I'm the one who gets punished.
Yeah. Yeah, there is such a thing as coercion.
Yeah. And it also misunderstands and I've talked about this on the show before as well. There's the ordinary and the extraordinary actions of demons. Exorcism, Deliverance ministry deals with the extraordinary action of demons. The ordinary action of demons is temptation. Remember, in the Garden of Eden, the snake does not hold Eve down and make her eat the apple. He suggests, he tempts, he entices. He doesn't command, he doesn't force, he doesn't coerce. She is and when Eve suggests it to Adam, she doesn't shove it into his mouth and hold his nose until he eats. She suggests, she talks. Most of what demons do to get people to do bad things is talk to them. Everyone has that experience we call the conscience. That little voice deep in your soul that tells you when what you're doing is not right. Oh, okay, almost everybody. Granted, psychopaths, sociopaths don't.
Yeah.
But most of us have that voice. We've talked before about how there's that other voice That voice that says sometimes it says you're no good. There's also that voice that says, take the tip money, nobody's going to notice. Go ahead and take that hit on that, crack pipe. Have another beer. You're not too drunk to drive.
Mm-hmm.
That, and I'm not even saying all of that is ordinary demonic activity, but that is more of what demons do to get people to do bad things. It's that little voice whispering in your ear, nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about that stupid minor thing you do. Or, another classic one that's a great way to get people doing, oh, it's okay if you do it, but no, they can't do it. It's horrible when those other people do that thing. Mm-hmm. It's a comment I saw on my Facebook post, I think says it nicely, which was that notice how a lot of Christians in the United States seem to be fine with what essentially amounts to Sharia law as long as they're the ones who get to decide what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, look at and I'm not talking about most Christians, but the extreme Christian right and what they want to legislate and how they talk about what, women who dress too sexily are asking for it. And then look at Sharia, the extreme end of Sharia law. See if you can find the differences besides the Allah, God, Jesus. Because I can't.
No, it's the same thing.
But before we continue, we should give out the number.
Yeah.
609-807-2492, 609-807-2492. Feel free to call in with questions, comments. Let me know you like what I'm saying. Let if you think you're full of it. I'm full of it.
Please.
Yeah. Friendly debate is always fun. It's one of the things I kind of miss about having Chris around.
Yeah.
He took pride in busting my stones.
He did.
But again, for exorcism, this is the point I'm getting at, is it needs to be very strict. It needs to be very specific. Now, we've gotten into all of those details. Maybe it's time to get into the things most of you are waiting for, which is the weird and creepy and bizarre.
Yeah.
If you guys want an idea of what can actually happen during a true case of demonic possession, believe it or not, the original William Peter Blatty novel and movie, The Exorcist, is a really good place to start. Blatty based the novel on the case of Roland Doe, who was a child in St. Louis, Missouri. That's it. Although the case did, in fact, just like in the movie and the book, of course, it takes place in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
It started there. The demon convinced the mother to move to St. Louis. There's an excellent book, and you can find the back when we were just a YouTube channel, the author of the book was on, and he was a really good guest. But a Confrontation with Evil by Stephen LaChance, which is a detailed look into the actual case and what really happened. If you want to get into all the details of the Roland Doe case. And some of the things that actually happened there are much crazier than the movie in ways I didn't even expect.
Like what?
The personal appearance by St. Michael the Archangel.
Oh, yeah.
The possibility that one of the people involved may have actually become possessed, like at the end of the movie.
Right. I remember that part.
Certainly the church got up to some odd things at the mental health facility where some of it took place. And basically an entire floor was shut down not long afterwards. And there's a lot of rumors that it was being used for some sort of paranormal experimentation by the church. And it was a Catholic-run psychiatric institution, so... But in terms of the movie, for that matter, there were 2 Jesuit priests that were technical advisors on that movie. It is full of accurate references to actual exorcism and demonology. Case in point, and this is something... Have you seen the original Exorcist?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Here's a question for you. You probably know from hearing me talk about this kind of thing before. And for our listeners, who remembers what started everything? Why she got possessed? Do you remember?
Oh, God. Was it a Ouija board?
Yes.
Okay. That I don't remember that so much from the movie as I just know from
Yeah.
listening to you.
That's why I'm like, you probably won't get. But no, if you watch the movie, she's using Ouija board early on in the movie, and she's using it to communicate with a spirit she calls Captain Howdy. Later, when the spirit starts to attack her, says, "Stop, Captain Howdy." They don't overplay it, and here's the thing: in the original case, yeah, very much. The kid had an aunt who was a spiritualist. When the aunt died, they were trying to reach her with Ouija. The aunt taught him how to use a Ouija board. After his aunt died, he tries to contact her with the board. His mother becomes convinced that the aunt had left them a sizable sum of money. And they're using the board to contact the aunt. The aunt starts causing scratches and welts to appear on the child's body. And that's actually why they go to St. Louis, is that appears in welts across his stomach. And it's a really insanely disturbing book to read. Again, a confrontation with evil. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, and all of that. I read it. I enjoyed it. I was disturbed by it. And the guy who's involved is also an investigator and knows what the heck he's doing. He had a very, I don't know as much about it, but St. Louis case called The House That Screamed, which was declared a demonic case by the Roman Catholic Church, of all things. But a lot of there's a lot of other details, like the demons. They ask how long the demon's going to stay there. It says till she rots and lies stinking in the earth. That's very much the sort of thing that they'll say. The blasphemy against God, the endless strings of profanity, the objects flying around the room. Even, like I was alluding to earlier, when he takes the bottle of holy water and throws it on her. And it actually being tap water is a legitimate test. She reacts violently to it. Of course, that's the catch of they don't want to be exorcised. They're smart.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, what we do is more the other way around. Is we hide the holy thing in something ordinary and see how they respond. But again, we're treading dangerously on things I don't want to get into detail about, because I don't want somebody to take this as, hey, go do this.
Yeah.
For those in the paranormal community, the short form or remotely involved in the paranormal community, you may have heard of the considerable controversy about the idea of provocation. That's what we're talking about. Except now it has a physical body, so it's even more able to beat you senseless.
Yeah. Don't try this at home.
Yeah. And the reality is, a lot of the time it's not necessary, because it'll reveal. They're very smart, but they're also very proud. Usually they'll reveal themselves at some point. Something's going to give you a hint that it's. Granted, it may take time sitting around waiting for something to happen, which is the boring part of being a paranormal investigator. Here's another fun one for you that a lot of people don't realize. So, like I said, actual solemn exorcism is the tactical nuke of spiritual warfare. But there's another form of exorcism that I and many of our listeners, I almost guarantee, I don't know about you, possibly you, I don't know, have gone through at least once in their life. You want to take a guess?
I'm going to say baptism.
Smart man, yes. Baptism is a lesser ritual of exorcism. Funny fact, I forget which door, but the one door of the church traditionally is known as the Devil's Door. And it was traditional, particularly in Europe, to leave the door open, because it was believed that during the baptism, the devil fled through it. That's also a large part of why not that many people become possessed, is they've already been through a ritual of exorcism. It keeps things. It gives you an inherent protection. That is definitely an advantage. House blessings are also a lesser form, which is why they work so well. It's a lesser form of exorcism. There's two ways of doing a house blessing, both of which work well. One is throw everything out. The other way is don't worry about casting the spirits out. Just fill the house with God, because God, the Holy Spirit and demons don't coexist well. I actually tend to prefer the fill it with holiness because I think it's a more focus on the positive instead of the negative philosophy. But it's taste. I think it's taste. They both certainly work. And there's a lot of other things. There's another consideration people have. Because I've had people ask me this as well, what about me? How do I stop myself from being possessed? Let's clear something up. Possession is not like you see as much as I love it, it's not like you see in Supernatural.
No. Oh, good thing.
Demons don't just wander by and go, that one looks juicy, possess.
Just jumping from body to body like it's no big deal.
The point that Supernatural has it more right, technically, actually, funny enough. Although, I don't know, I've heard people talk about it. I'm skeptical of it, but there is an idea in the paranormal, occasionally seen in the paranormal community of holy angel possession. And in Supernatural, to be possessed by an angel, you have to say yes. That is true in actual demonology. The first thing to realize about true possession is at some point along the line, the person has to say yes.
Well,
it's not an accident.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. Had to make that joke.
Yes, you did.
At some point.
It had to be done. And it's a fair joke because they're legalistic little bastards.
Yep.
It's one of the common things, and it's if anyone out there is thinking about getting their house blessed or blessing it themselves, one piece of advice: all the cabinets, all of the boxes, all of the little cubbies and containers you got in your house, drawers, open them before you do it or have it done. Because again, they're legalistic little bastards. If every room in the house isn't taken care of, if every nook and cranny isn't opened in at least in some symbolic sense, well, he didn't bless that. I can sit there. My favorite example of this comes from the late Father Brose, who told me, and a number of other people at various lectures over the years about doing an exorcism in a church, which is very common. Usually, exorcisms are done in either a church or a hospital. But the demon in the person begging, don't make me go back to hell. Let me go sit on the steeple. I won't cause any problem. Just let me sit on the steeple of the church. Needless to say, he said no.
So you mean the cornflakes can be possessed?
Demonic cornflakes.
Demonic cornflakes.
The terror is real. There's got to be a B horror movie like that somewhere.
That's a sobering thought, yeah.
Actually, no, that is a good question to address, joking aside. Objects cannot be possessed. They can be inhabited, but they cannot be possessed. Which largely sounds like a game of semantics. Mm-hmm. But there's an important, at least theologically speaking, there's an important difference. So, like I just said, to enter a person, to actually possess somebody, it needs permission. As we've talked about many times on this show, to get involved in somebody's life to begin with, it needs permission. It needs what we call grounds. You have to. This is the reason that demons. Another common question: why don't demons possess politicians, business leaders, petty third world dictators with nukes?
They probably do.
Not as often as you think, but it does happen. There is a fair amount of historical evidence, if you look in the right places, that Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin were both possessed. People have speculated Hitler was possessed by Satan himself. I don't think so. Satan's not that stupid. Which isn't to say about somebody else in the hierarchy might not have been. But it does happen. But the thing is, to be possessed, you have to give consent at some point. That's why most people aren't. And you have to do something to let it in. Most often this is either actual satanic ritual or something like screwing around with a Ouija board. I don't recommend either. If you haven't done anything like that, unless you have the misfortune to either have somebody place a curse on you or move into somewhere where one of these things have been done, you're probably never going to, or buy something, cursed objects and things like that. It's probably never going to happen. But by taking that action to let it into your life and then giving it permission to enter your body, it has possession of you. Not just in the sense of, okay, it's in your body and running you like it's to the promise, to use supernatural terminology. But it has a claim of ownership over your soul. This is another thing, and this is something the Bible even talks about when you cast a demon out, it goes and it wanders the empty, desolate places of the world, and then it comes back. And if it finds everything neatly swept and organized, and nothing's changed, they tidied up the place and nothing changed, not only does it move back in, it brings 7 worse than itself with it. I think we have a question. Oh, okay, different question. Never mind. Not related.
Not related to anything.
Yeah. But that's also why if someone has been possessed, they need to make spiritual changes. They need, if you have something in your house, you need to get rid of whatever gave it grounds to walk in. Get rid of your Ouija boards, get rid of your books of ritual magic, get rid of all those kinds of things. Because if you don't close the door, it's going to just walk back in and set up shop. And every single time that it does, it gets worse. This is also, for example, why, Christian and other positive religions aren't the only ones. And let's be clear, it's not just Christianity. Every major religion has a form of exorcism. They may call it something else, but it does the same basic thing. Buddhism and Taoism that doesn't have a god in the Western sense of the word have rituals of exorcism. But, Satanists, let me rephrase, devil worshippers, so that people don't confuse me for talking about, I'm not talking about the Satanic Temple, I'm not talking about the Church of Satan, I'm talking about actual devil, people who worship the devil, have their own banishing rituals. Aleister Crowley had his own banishing rituals. There's a certain gentleman with a sword out there who has his own banishing rituals. Black magic rituals don't work. Let me explain why. There's 2 reasons. The first reason is, like I said, if you don't make a spiritual change, it's just going to set up shop again. The second reason is how they're supposed to work. The usual, there is a book called The Key of Solomon that has rituals for summoning and banishing demons. The type of magic it uses is known as Goetia. The way that most Goetic mages exorcise a demon is summoning a bigger demon to get rid of it. For anyone who's listening who doesn't understand why that's a dumb idea, let me use the analogy that a lot of people who know me well and have heard me use it before enjoy. Imagine you have a problem with a cat burglar breaking into your house. Do you think going and getting a serial killer to get rid of your cat burglar problem is a good solution? Because, yes, your cat burglar is out of the house and never coming back. Just don't dig too deep in the garden. You now have a serial killer problem.
Yeah.
You can't summon the worst thing. Summoning something worse, just, okay, you got, case in point, Marcus, the guy with the sword. It's like, one house, so you opened a portal, yeah, get rid of your demon, you have a portal now. Nothing I can do about it. Yeah, get rid of your demon, now you have a poltergeist. Nothing I can do about it. When you summon one thing to get rid of another, it ends badly. People really shouldn't need me to explain to them why this is a stupid idea, but apparently they do. We're almost near the end of our time, although this is not the end of this topic. There's more worth saying. So let me give out the number again, 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492. Feel free to ask questions, comments. Brian, you've been somewhat quiet for understandable reasons. This is out of your wheelhouse. Any questions you can think of?
I've been trying to think of, things. Do you think that there should be more legislation on dealing with it? It kind of crosses that church-state
I would say
thing, but in, public interest, stopping, harmful applications.
that's a really... I would say no, but if the religious ritual leads to child abuse, leads to, God forbid, the child dying, then the people responsible should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Because separation of church and state does not protect your right to commit criminal acts, nor should it. Also, seriously, people, let's think this through logically for 10 seconds. Demons are not physical creatures. They are spirits. They do not have a body. They may be inhabiting a body, but they're not stuck in the body. They can leave anytime they want. Further, demons come from hell. Their existence is the most horrible, terrible, agonizing pain you can't imagine, because it's worse than whatever you can think of. The worst thing you can think of, what they go through every day is worse. I mean, lakes of fire, things like start with the book of Revelations if you want an idea. Be physically abusing someone who's possessed to drive the devil out does not work. And the idea is stupid on its face. One, you beat the kid up. The demon's been through worse. It doesn't care. Two, if you kill the kid, it's just going to move on to go torture somebody else. And all you've done is kill the person you were trying to help. On a related note, forced starvation, forcing a person who's possessed by a demon, is equally stupid. Yes, in the Bible, there is an instance where the apostles and the disciples failed to cast out a demon. And they went to Jesus, who cast the demon out, and then explained that this kind can only be cast out by prayer and fasting. This is the reason for the Ritual Romanum exorcism, is it's a big list of prayers. And yes, it involves fasting. The fasting is for the priest, not the person being exorcised.
Right.
The person being exorcised is under considerable physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual stress. You don't want to add to that by denying them food. You do not want to add to that by denying them medication. Do not give out medical advice unless you are a qualified medical person, professional. I don't care if you went to a 3-week correspondence course in Christian counseling. If you are not licensed by the state, don't give out medical advice. Don't tell someone who you think you've cast a demon out of that they don't need to take their antidepressants anymore. Because here's the thing. Mental illness is real. Mental illness is not caused by demons. You can be mentally ill and not be possessed. You can be, not be mentally ill and be possessed. You can be not mentally ill and not possessed, obviously, but you can also be mentally ill and possessed. And if you get rid of the demon possessing a mentally ill person, it won't change the mental illness at all. So telling someone who is chronically depressed to go off their antidepressants, if you are not a medical professional can kill them.
Yeah.
Do not give out medical. And at no point in this am I giving out medical advice. My medical advice is go talk to a qualified medical professional and leave me out of it. I don't give medical advice. I am not a doctor. And even if you're absolutely sure you cast the demon out, let a doctor decide what to do about their medications. Let their therapists or doctors handle it from there. Do not get mixed up in it. And for God's sakes, don't try and cast a demon of depression out of somebody. It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. Trust me, there are plenty of people who wish they did, because it'd make it a lot easier if there was just one magical spell. Essentially, one magic spell I could do, and then poof, all of your problems will go away.
Oh, yeah. We'd be lining up for that.
Yeah. Another quick thing, because we got to do our last sponsor, and then we got to book it. To be aware of is this. If you are a priest who's performing an exorcism, if you're a person who needs an exorcism, do not ask for, as a priest, do not ask for, and as a person asking for one, do not offer monetary compensation. The Bible explicitly condemns selling the gifts of God, and exorcism is literally the first one mentioned on the list of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, for money. In fact, it's a sin that people don't talk about anymore, but it's, if anything, is more prominent these days, which is called simony, which comes from Simon Magus, who basically asked if he could buy his way into the clergy. Anyone who's offering to exorcise your demons for fun and profit is not working with God. A true exorcist will be, if anything, slightly insulted if you offered to pay them. But on that note, there's two things we got to do.
Yep.
Three things, because two things, because I should have checked with Gene on the one. But so one thing to be aware of, folks, if you missed it, because last week's broadcast was a little, although we're going to have it up on YouTube soon, so don't worry about that. But we are finally going to start again doing classes here out of the studio. We're looking at the end of the month, beginning of June. Seating is going to be limited. It's going to be $20 a class. It is altogether a 30-session course, covering how to conduct paranormal investigations, theology, demonology, angelology, a little bit of anthropology, psychology. There's going to be a ton of stuff in there that if you want to become a paranormal investigator, here's a good way to start. If, for that matter, if you're someone like Brian who doesn't want to be a paranormal investigator, but you want to get some ideas of how it all works, you might, or some general ideas about demonology and folklore and things of that nature, it's not a bad choice for that either. I have various experts I'm going to talk to about bringing in for topics that they know more about than I do. It should be a lot of fun. We're going to run it here. If you're not aware where we are basically on the outskirts of Trenton, New Jersey. If you cannot make it, we are also going to be able to record these things, and we'll offer them online. The downside, obviously, is it's better to come into the studio, because then you actually get the interaction one-on-one time, and things like that. Obviously, there'll still be emails and things like that, so you can still contact me if you decide to do the course. It's something worth looking at. I think $20 is pretty reasonable. Go to our Facebook page, the Paranormal Encyclopedia, or on YouTube, Paranormal Encyclopedia, if you want more information, or kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia@gmail.com. Links in the description if you want more information. This will be starting soon. Pretty much we're looking to get enough people to get things going. And last but not least, we need to talk about another relevant topic, which is internet security.
Yes.
Folks, we live in an age where identity theft and hackers are more of a problem, perhaps, than ever before. And a lot of us are understandably concerned about our security when we're surfing the internet or we're buying things online. For that matter, even if you're not worried about hackers, there's this whole thing about the government kind of spying on you. Facebook selling your information and things like that. If you want the point I'm getting at is if you want some good internet security, a good starting place is what's called a virtual private network. You sign into a virtual private network before you get on the internet. It gives you The virtual private network in question gives you an extra layer of protection. In the case of the one we're talking about, which is NordVPN, one of the best, you're talking about military-grade encryption.
Yeah.
Prices are extremely affordable and reasonable. Starting less than $19.95 a month, I'm going to say. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee. I use it myself. Our on-hiatus co-host, Chris, also uses it.
Yeah.
It is a great program. It's a lot. You can go to the link in the description below. It'll help out the show enormously, and you won't regret it. If you already have a virtual private network and you already have Audible, you can also always help us out by comment, sharing, and subscribing.
Yes.
Or if you have a few bucks you want to throw our way, you can always go to our Patreon, patreon.com/demonology. We have some rewards and things like that on there that you can help us out with. But that's going to do it for tonight. This is Kevin Mears saying good night and God bless.
Brian McKinley saying keep your fangs sharp.
Good night, everybody.